Why aren't more companies doing this? This needs to be the next trend. Imagine the possibilities. If you're a fan, this is it.
In the PC world, you've got several different tiers when it comes to PC builds. To start with, there's the Franken build. It mashes up dusty leftovers, keeping your shelves full with some modern hardware scattered about. A single stick of faster RAM here, a decent GPU there. These are the builds that you typically find when there are budget restrictions or when someone makes smart decisions and only upgrades components as their specific task requires. This is perfectly acceptable functionally, but aesthetically, it's an absolute nightmare. Then we move on to the next tier, the mostly planned, somewhat cable managed, and for most people, a perfectly good looking build. The parts may or may not be from the same manufacturer, but they mostly match in color. The fans might be RGB, and if they are, you took the time to set up a color scheme instead of ditching the fan control to save a few bucks like that last tier. I would say that the majority of PC builds land in this general area. Functional, pleasing to the eye, and worthy of showing off. This is where most people stop. The third and final tier is the themed build. You will also find the extreme builds in this category like the one back there. And this is where the real money is spent. Everything must match. Painstaking hours are poured into making sure every little detail matches a very specific theme. After days, weeks, or even months spending every available moment working on your ultimate build, you finally install that last cable tie and step back. The showcase is complete. ASUS has recognized that this level of PC dedication is gaining traction, and there's a growing market for the niche themed build. They also realized that most of us that want to build like that don't have the time to create it ourselves. What we've got here then is an easy to assemble smattering of matched theme parts. What's the theme? Well, it's Gundam, of course. Yep, giant fighting robots. I have some friends that are absolutely nuts about this stuff. If you are a fan of this wildly popular franchise, then you need to listen up. Now, before we get to shots of this thing all put together, let's go ahead and see what components we have inside. So driving this build is the Intel i9-11900KF. Now, that is going to sit inside this right here. This is a Z590 Gundam themed motherboard, and it is adorned with all sorts of Gundam labels. Now, what is going to sit on top of this and keep it cool? Well, that is a 360mm AIO. Now, this is white, of course, and it has a mobile suit head on it. Well, mobile suit. Mecha. Oh, the fans are gonna murder me on this one. If I am making your head explode right now, let your frustration out in the comments. Now, the radiator is going to be cooled by 3 120mm fans. They are white, they have RGB. Of course they do. Now, to push the frames out, why wouldn't you go with a 3090, Gundam themed? And no PC is complete without a power supply. And it's black. Nah, just kidding. It's white. It's Gundam themed. Well, it's actually kind of like a metallic gray, but it has white accents on it. Doesn't matter, it matches the theme. All of these parts match the Gundam theme. And other than the Gundam themed Helios case, which is full of sneaky accents, that's where the themed parts end. To finish off the build, there are 4 sticks of 8GB 4000 megahertz Thermaltake RAM, and it is running at the advertised 4000 megahertz, and it is stable. And for storage, there is an AdLink S70 1TB NVMe drive. Let's get into the build then, shall we? Let's just go ahead and... just kidding. I gotta save the boxes. Now we're all clear. Let's take those components and build it. Ready? Done. Easy, right? Well, if you are lucky enough to live in Qatar, you can head to Store 974 and pick up all these components fully assembled and tested. Now, I think that the build team at Store 974 did a fantastic job putting this all together. I mean, just look at the cable management. Now, the color scheme isn't set out of the box. You'll be greeted with the typical rainbow puke that some people, well, a surprisingly large amount of people leave stock. I went ahead and changed the theme from this to this. Let me know in the comments which one looks better. I'm working with the build team now to see if they will pre-apply a theme like this or leave it to the end user. If that's the case, it really isn't difficult to set up in Aura Creator. As for the rest of the build, the airflow is set up proper, all components were installed correctly and secured as they should be. Windows was installed and the graphics drivers were updated. I did find the memory profile set to default instead of XMP. That is 4000 MHz RAM in there and it should be used as such. I have spoken to the build team and they will be getting back to me with an answer on if that XMP profile will be enabled when this gets delivered to you. So the big question is, how does it perform? If this thing does a giant flop during benchmarks, then all that expensive themed gear doesn't really matter, does it? Well, being solid ASUS Strix parts with a Gundam shell, performance is incredible. Temperatures are decent, but not the best I've seen for these components in different cases. This is due to the glass plate in the front that pretty much blocks all the airflow. Still, the amount of fans in here and the size of the radiator keep temperatures reasonable. I just wouldn't go crazy with the overclocks. The overall noise is very low. I mean, it's idling right now and you can barely hear it. And when the fans do ramp up, it's not overwhelming. During a typical gaming session, this is not going to be bothersome. It is also always a good idea to set up some sort of fan profile to keep those RPMs down until absolutely necessary. So I put the CPU on a 30-minute loop in Cinebench R23 and it reached a maximum temperature of 73 degrees, which is well below what this CPU is rated for. It's a little high. I'd like to see with a 360 radiator slightly lower temperatures, but it is reasonable. For the GPU, after 30 minutes in Furmark, we were seeing temperatures of 66.9 degrees. Nice. Opening up 3D Mark, we got a score of 18,063 in Time Spy and 13,176 in Port Royal. Now compare this to 13,107 in Port Royal and 17,506 in Time Spy on the 5950X and Dell 3090 I've got back there. You can see that the stock Gundam hardware is performing as advertised with no throttling. It's got form and function to back it up. So enough talk. Let's see some glamour shots. You want it now, don't you? Of course you do. Heck, I want it and I'm not even into Gundam. These parts are all available separately, but if you want it built and ready to rock, then head down to that description and click on the Store 974 link. When you drop this thing in your cart, which I'm sure you're gonna do, don't forget to use the code BartmansBits to help support this channel. Now, if you want to see more extreme builds like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.